Welcome back to the kitchen. This is Nutrition Proportion with Dr. Noel Aldrich. In metabolic balance, one of the common proteins that has shown up for many individuals is the mushroom. Now in mushrooms, there are two categories of mushrooms. There are mushrooms that are protein mushrooms, and there are mushrooms that are vegetable mushrooms. So the distinction is that any mushroom that you find in your vegetable listing are mushrooms that do not have very much protein at all. So the button mushrooms, the chanterelle mushrooms, the cremini mushrooms, those are the type of mushrooms that go great with your salads, go great with roasted vegetables, but they have very little protein value at all. There are three specific mushrooms that have great protein value. One is the portobello mushroom, another is the shiitake, and another is the oyster mushroom. So these, some of you will find on your list as a good protein substitute or protein in substitution for meat. And that's what we want to focus on today. How do you use these protein mushrooms? Because they're not very common for many of you. One of the first things, of course, that we need to do is weigh out our portion size. And depending on the size of the portobello or the amount of shiitake that you've been able to acquire, you want to weigh that out and see that it is the right portion. In this case here, I need to get closer to 1.5 portobello. There we go. So this would be the portion size that I need to do for dinner. Then the very first thing you consider is how do you want to prepare it? It might be that you would simply turn it over upside down and sprinkle in the seasonings that you want with this. Might be rosemary, might be some Italian herbs like oregano and basil, salt and pepper included with that, and just let that sit for a time. Especially if you could prepare this ahead of time, just let it sit for 12 hours or maybe 24 hours. Just let those herbs kind of diffuse in flavor through that. And then you take the entire portion that you've weighed out, stick it on a baking sheet into the oven, and let that roast for about half an hour or so at 350, and that will be a nice roasted mushroom for you with those flavors emanating throughout it. A second way to prepare this is simply to take and make very thin slices, about the same way that you would see bacon strips or thinly sliced fajita. When you go to a restaurant and you've ordered a fajita, you get those thin strips of beef or maybe chicken, and we're going to do the same thing here with the mushroom. Now, as you get that thinly sliced, then what you'll be able to do is place this in a roasting pan or in a frying pan, saute pan, and roast it with some seasonings of your choice. And we're almost through there. Roast it with some seasonings of your choice, cook it up really well, and add that on top of your vegetables that you're also having with that meal. So you might do fajita seasonings, you might do taco seasonings sprinkled over it, heat it up, saute it really well, and so you'll have a taco flavored fajita style type of meal. Or you can thirdly take these pieces and put them into your food processor. And what we're doing this time is taking the mushroom pieces and we're going to grind it up just like the consistency of ground meat, ground hamburger. So we're going to chop them up here. That won't take very long at all. Just spoon around to make sure all of the big chunks are done. That looks pretty good. And then again, do the same thing. Preparing it for a hot meal, I would take all of this ground mushroom, put it in a frying pan, and begin to fry it just like it would hamburger, and sprinkle the taco seasoning over it, sprinkle any other seasoning of your choice over it, and let those flavors really soak in through the mushroom. So then you can do a taco salad. You can have the taco mushroom on the side with other vegetables. And this is another way that you can enjoy mushrooms. Finally, you can also simply make mushroom soup. And a great way to do that is taking some of our vegetable broth that we've talked about in Metabolic Balance. Mix up the appropriate quantity of broth that you want with your soup. Throw in all the vegetables with that. Take your mushrooms and add that into it. Perhaps the mushrooms already ground up like this, really fine, so that it's not as much of a texture issue. And enjoy a good soup. If you reduce the soup broth a little bit, then it becomes more sauteed vegetables with mushrooms. And those would be some varieties. Another thing that you might also do with this is take and add your vegetables to the food processor. So that might include some bell peppers, some onions, chop it all up together in a mash, and then spoon out all that you've put in the food processor into half of a bell pepper. And so now you've got a stuffed pepper that you can put into the oven and roast that at 350 degrees for 20 minutes to a half hour, and you've got a delicious roasted pepper filled with the vegetarian stuffing. And those are some ideas that can help you to put together a delicious mushroom meal. Thank you for joining me in the kitchen. I look forward to meeting with you again tomorrow.